record the session. Just want to let everyone know. Welcome to this Peralta Online Equity Conference. My name is Chelsea Cohen. I'll be moderating this session. Um, the session's being recorded, like I said. Please keep your mics on mute while the presenters are speaking. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat. And then you can also, if you would like closed captions, you can enable them in the bottom toolbar. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters, Sarah Straub and Rachel Jumper from Stephen F. Austin State University. The title of the session is Humanizing the Algorithm, Using AI and Equity Frameworks to Rethink Online Course Design. With that, I'll turn it over to you two.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much for having us here. And I apologize for being a little bit, I guess, flustered this morning. It is the last week of the semester, and all of the assignments are coming in that are late. So I know that we're all in that same position as well, or coming to it. But my name is Dr. Sarah Straub. I am an associate professor of curriculum and instruction. My teaching focus is social studies methods, and I mostly research multicultural education, social justice education, and I'm really excited to explore how AI can support equity-centered online design.
Thanks. And hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Rachel Jumper, and I am an associate professor in human development and family studies. My teaching focus areas are family communication, and then at the graduate level, I teach our general human sciences courses, and I focus my research on communicating about childlessness and then also family and consumer science education. All right, so before we start our project, we just wanted to be transparent about how our presentation itself was creative because we are talking about AI and we did use AI to help us with this. And we'll be talking about how we can use AI in our classes and helping reduce cognitive load. So the initial structure for our presentation today, we generated using AI tools. And then we went through and intentionally adapted that through our faculty review process that we will talk more about today as well, and how we can use equity-centered frameworks like Universal Design for Learning and our digital learning equity analysis protocol that we used when we reviewed our classes previously. So in this case, we really saw AI as a starting point, not as an endpoint. So all the instructional decisions that we made, all framing, all equity considerations were made through human review. So we looked at what AI suggested, and then we had to put that in with our own pedagogical intent into our courses. And we wanted to share that because we think it matters, because AI can support our design work in our courses, but to have true equity, that requires interpretation, judgment, and accountability. And we believe that those remain human-centered. So we want to talk about AI and how we use it today, but also recognizing that we have to have that human component to ensure equity in our courses.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so that brings us to our 3 objectives for today. We want to apply a digital learning equity analysis protocol, and we're going to show you some examples with some videos. We want to evaluate AI through an equity lens, and we'll talk about the framework that we developed, like co-created with AI. And we want to identify humanizing equity-centered design strategies. We want this session to be practical, and we want you to leave with something that you can use and not just think about.
So first, we'd like for you to scan this QR code or go to the Mentimeter link that we're going to post in the chat, and think about a couple of questions. So we want you thinking about what areas of your course need the most immediate attention, but we want to get a feel for where you all are. It helps us to understand the room and helps you to reflect on your own starting point for using AI for equity practices as well.
And so I'm going to unshare for just a second. And well, I'll give you maybe 10 seconds to do the QR, or afterwards I'll have you go to the link, and then I'm going to pull up our answers. Okay, so overall, what do we see here, Rachel?
Curious but cautious.
Exactly. And we have another one, but I have to advance the slide before that one's going to be open for us. So most of us are curious but cautious, and many of us are also excited. And here's our next one. So it should update. And maybe, Rachel, you might have to log into Mentimeter to advance to the next slide because I'm not logged in. Or while we're waiting, this is us changing it up. If you wanted to, you could put your answer in the chat. Have you ever systematically reviewed your courses for equity? And while you're thinking through that, I just want to share, you'll learn a little bit more about Rachel and my digital equity analysis project. And I would say that's probably one of the best processes I've ever been through to improve. So I'm not sure what's happening with the Mentimeter, but it's okay. We can keep on going.
And I see a lot of not yets and informalies. And that's really where we sort of were coming from too when we started looking at this, and thinking about how can we use AI to formally review, engage in a course review content. So when we look at why this work matters, both Sarah and I teach online, and we really feel like online learning expanded rapidly post-pandemic, and we both taught online pre-pandemic as well. And so it was a little bit different. We weren't scrambling to put our courses online, but still, we saw a lot of different changes that came along with that. So we really felt like we could, for our own practices, see three different time periods: the pre-pandemic time period, pandemic, and then now we really feel like we're in an AI era of online teaching. And each shift really changes the instructor choices and student experiences that we're having in our classes. And online learning, when we started it and with the pandemic, it didn't create inequities, but it made them visible. And so once online learning expanded so rapidly after the pandemic, those equity gaps remain in access, course design, and supports. So we feel like AI can play a role in introducing both opportunities like scaling our accessibility and risks, as in biased outputs or actually increasing cognitive load, which we're trying to reduce. So we'll talk through more of those as the presentation progresses, but we really feel like AI has the potential to either widen or reduce those gaps in equity in courses online.
And so I noticed in the chat that Carolina said that she doesn't teach a course, but she supports faculty with their reviews, and that is perfect for our origin story. So this whole process, again, pre-pandemic, so pre-AI era, wasn't theoretical. We applied this process to our own courses, and we stayed in this process for 6 months. Now, to motivate you all to stay to the end of our presentation, we will share a QR code to the Caring for Students playbook, which is where all of these images came from, so 1 through 6. But basically, in fall 2022, which I guess is like mid-pandemic, I received an email about a training to help with online teaching best practices. Obviously, I had been an online instructor, but everyone during that pandemic period of time was like, yes, we have to do better. And how else but to get some training? So I quickly skimmed what it was about and I signed up for it without really digesting what that training would cover, but knowing that I wanted to learn how to be an effective teacher in online spaces. So fast forward a couple of weeks, and I realized that this was a multi-week undertaking with mentor meetings, discussions, and reflections. And I dove into that digital learning equity framework, which is again from the Caring for Students playbook. And still, at the end of that training, I realized that I needed more time to like fully engage with that process. That was a couple of weeks long. It wasn't the whole semester. And I reached out to someone that I didn't really know very well yet. That person was Rachel Jumper. So I reached out to Rachel because she had won our Teaching Excellence Award for our university as a fully online asynchronous professor. And typically, you know how the ideas are, if you're online, if you're asynchronous, people are thinking that you're not as skilled or that your job is so much easier. But she had been reviewed by peers And the peers had found online asynchronous that she was pretty much kicking butt. So I wanted to get her on my team because I wanted to do better too. And what we did is we selected one of our online courses to analyze over the course of the semester. We used that Caring for Students playbook and we divided up each stage and either implemented a rubric tool or analysis tool that was provided, or we created our own to look at our syllabus, our course content, how our assessments were going, our communication plans, our ways to communicate institutional supports, and even our own self-care. We presented our findings to each other over the course of that semester, and we took immediate action to improve our courses, to improve those equity-centered practices in those courses. So these 6 areas became our structure for examining equity in online learning. And again, full disclosure before we continue, this slide looks pretty great, right? There's this new AI tool in Google Slides. I don't know if you've seen it, but you can create the most ugly slide ever. And then there's a button that says enhance this slide. And that's what happened here. It took our same words, it just made it a little bit more pretty. But if you look here in the chat, I'm going to ask you guys to again engage. I want you to think about where inequities show up in your own classes. So in the chat, share one area in your classes where you see these inequities. It could be in the syllabus tone and language. It could be in content and the representation or lack thereof. It could be in the assessment and feedback, or it could be in communication and support. And I would just like to get a little bit of a pulse. Jennifer put in communication and support. Let's see, we'll give you a couple of content and representation, communication and support, syllabus tone, feedback. Josh is unsure. Thanks for being honest. So all over the place for sure. And we're just seeing that these are opportunities for us to enhance our courses.
All right, so our work that we did, it really draws on 3 different complementary theoretical frameworks. So cognitive load theory was the first one, and this one is really the one that we kept coming back to. So cognitive load theory, most of you are probably familiar with it, but it states that extraneous cognitive load should be reduced to leave sufficient cognitive resources for the actual learning to take place. So essentially, if our courses are not organized well, or it's hard for students to find things, then they're doing so much work on the front end, just trying to find the information that we want for them to learn, that they don't have as much space to learn the actual content that we want them to be thinking about. And so we were really looking at ways in our classes that we could reduce the cognitive load for our students and make it easier for them to find content, and then learn the course content that we wanted for them to learn. The second was equity-centered practices. So a critical aspect for us of promoting equity in online spaces is the need for us to be aware of potential biases in digital learning platforms. And we live in a very rural area, so equity also included access to the digital learning platform itself. And so we really wanted to actively work to overcome those barriers. So thinking about things like how we're presenting the information in multiple formats, because some students may not have the bandwidth to download a video. Those were the kind of things that we were trying to think about for our students. And then culturally responsive teaching in online learning involves recognizing and valuing diverse cultural backgrounds of our students and connecting them with connecting their experiences from their lived experiences into what they're learning in the classroom, and into promoting positive cultural identities. So we use these theories to help us examine our courses and make sure that we were structuring the information and assignments to assist our students in their learning. So our key idea with this was that if students are overwhelmed, they can't learn. And so what we wanted to do was help our students learn. And a lot of times inequities in courses show up as unnecessary cognitive load for the students. And we felt like, using these theoretical frameworks, we could help reduce some of that cognitive load for our students.
And I love that you said that. And I don't know if you noticed the chat, but TL Brink also brought in some of those equity-centered practices and talked about just awareness of privilege. So thank you. Keep on engaging the chat. We really appreciate it. And now I'm sure that you guys are wondering when AI is going to come into the conversation, and it's this slide. So our method originally was this collaborative self-study. You can see a couple of citations there. Mostly we drew from the O'Dwyer et al. Article to really get our method aligned. But we used a collaborative self-study method documented in the literature. And this method cycles through planning, action, and reflection embedded within review and deliberation stages. But for this presentation, we asked, where can AI responsibly support review processes or act as an external critical friend while preserving human judgment? And that's what we're going to be going through a couple of examples for in the next couple of slides.
So the way that we're going to structure this is that I will talk to you about what we did in our initial study and then how we see AI coming and helping with this. And so Sarah will share with you some strategies that we use to incorporate AI into the process that we initially did ourselves. So initially, one of the things we looked at was the syllabus in our courses, and we did a pre and a post analysis of our syllabus, and we found that our syllabi were often very compliance focused. They were contractual and they lacked warmth and clarity. We were in the same college. Our college gave us a template every semester, and it was very focused on policy and compliance based. And those are things that have to be in our syllabi. We understand that. But we also, when we reviewed it, we recognize that our syllabi can have all of the compliance things in it and still have warmth and encourage belonging and be very transparent and provide clarity to our students. So our syllabi were never neutral. So whether it was compliance based or we were trying to make it more warm and send messages about belonging, we were doing that in both situations. So we really took a look at our syllabi and tried to reflect on those and where we could incorporate this warmer language into those. So again, I know Sarah mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we just wanted to say that the screenshots that you see on these slides are straight from the Caring for Students playbook from Every Learner Everywhere. It is a free download, and I think she's going to put that in the chat right now, but we also have a link to that document at the end of the presentation. And so we encourage you to use that playbook because that's what we use to drive our review. And we looked at all these questions that they have in that document.
Thank you, thank you.
She's got it in the
And
post now.
yes, and here is our very first example. Before I hit play, I do want to show you this slide. It's a screenshot of a little slide. It says demonstration of ChatGPT. And this is an example from a presentation that I did for our Center for Teaching and Learning. And it's about the importance of the prompt. And so you'll notice as I go through this example that I've input the Social Justice Syllabus Design Tool, and I've input my syllabus for fall 2026 for a course that I did. I put my persona, my online professor who specializes in digital online equity. I put my context. It's going to be slowly coming. I've got my task, which is generate a table that evaluates the attached syllabus. So I'm going to increase the speed a little bit because I didn't realize how slow I typed. I thought I was a better typer than that. And so I'm having that table that's going to show how I align my syllabus with that social justice syllabus design rubric. I've got the whole format for what I want it to show. I'm going to be including an exemplar, and I made sure that my tone was identified in this prompt as well. So as Rachel noted, policy is going to be in there, and you're going to see where I get dinged on my policy and the legalese kind of tone of my syllabus, but you're going to also see some areas of strength. So you can see that it rated for me what I was strong at, what I was developing at, and what needs attention. This is something that Rachel and I originally did independently without AI support, but we're just seeing this as a much faster way in this AI era of getting that conversation started. So you can see I'm developing with my social justice connection. I'm strong with my assignment clarity and purpose. I need attention to validating my student experience and anxiety. It gives me a recommendation of something that I can do. You can see my legalistic tone is still there, but my stereotype threat awareness is strong. So you can see each of lines in that very first column come from that social justice um, rubric, design rubric that was provided in my training. But it was just great. I went through and I looked at the key takeaways that were given, and then it gives me a recommendation of where I can go next. And I said instead that I wanted to focus on just on the ones where I needed development. And I asked for explicit examples of what I could do to improve. So if you can see here, I went through my grading mindset. My fixed first growth could be something that I consider. Again, this is just giving me ideas, not something that I need to do. Looking at my validation of student experience, which I mentioned earlier, what I could add, what I could normalize, the legalistic tones, how I could reframe policy, soften my attendance language, and then my tone could also be something that I would address, and so on and so forth. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that example of how you could review your own rubric, but let's go ahead and continue.
So our next key finding was about our course content itself. So in our pre-analysis review, we really looked at representation gaps and access issues for our students. So things like their bandwidth and the formats. So then for our post-analysis actions, we change things like including diverse materials and multiple formats. So for example, we had text, audio, video, provided transcripts. Again, if a student couldn't get a video to download because their bandwidth was too slow, then they could read the transcript instead. And so we really started to think about equity not just being what we teach, but how accessible and inclusive also that content is. And so we have an example next that'll show you how using AI can help with this as well.
All right. So again, my area is educator preparation. So Magic School is something that's specific to us. You could do a similar thing with ChatGPT, even the free version. What I like about ChatGPT is that it is really great with idea generation. If we wanted to go into the whole political sphere, I would say I prefer Gemini or Claude, but um, but ChatGPT does a great job of having um, really exciting ideas. It's a great idea generator to get that conversation started. So Magic School, again, educator prep, does a great job of beginning the whole thing by giving you some best practices, which ChatGPT does not do. It tells you to check for bias and accuracy. It acknowledges before every output that AI isn't perfect and that it might produce biased or incorrect information. Um, it acknowledges that 20 or the 80-20 rule, which you'll see on another slide, but AI can handle that initial 80% jump, and then you can add that final touch to the last 20%. It's a strong support tool to get you to the finish line. It reminds you, and this is from Magic School, it's not from me, it reminds you to trust your own judgment. So again, AI is the starting point. It doubles down, triples down. It really, really reinforces that. It is not the final solution. And then you always talk about protecting student privacy. So this is an example. It's going to play for a couple of minutes, but for academic content, I chose that this was for the university. This is a really quick example because I just wanted to get something for this presentation. But I'm giving that topic, I'm telling the standard. For this particular one, my pre-service teachers are learning, I'm going to pull something in, learning to how to best teach a certain aspect of the curriculum. And again, I really thought I was a fast typer, guys. Let's make it faster. I want it to align with EC6 TEKS, which is the state standards in Texas. I want to model inclusive teaching. I want to reference accommodations and scaffolds that can be included. And then I give the text length. So I want it to be enough for my learning management system. I want it to be 5 to 8 minutes of content because, again, like a best practice for online learning, you don't want students to really be watching a long video. I know this is a 45-minute presentation. Sorry, everyone, but we wanted to keep it short for our students. And then it gives you the output. So it has that overview, it has the key points, bullet points it for students, it's written in accessible language. And again, this is the initial output. I would take this, go into my LMS, develop a slide deck, unless Magic School does that too, it does. Develop a slide deck, have some real world examples, but this has reduced my cognitive load and gotten that starting point for the conversation to happen. Chelsea says, can you make it bigger so we can see the text you are typing? Unfortunately, this is it, but we can share the slide deck. And then you guys can pause it and read through it on your own. But again, I was just giving it that same sort of prompt guideline that I gave in the previous one.
All right. And then this was a big one for both of us, this communication and care. And so we really looked at how instructor presence matters. So we did things like including weekly videos to increase connection with our students, which did increase their perceived connection with us as faculty members because they saw us every week. Flexible channels really improved access. So intentional community building, increased belonging. You can see a screenshot from a Zoom from one of Sarah's classes where she pulled her students together into those community building activities. We we both put into our classes reminders. So I do an initial survey of my students and I ask them if they have anything that is coming up that semester that I should know about. Birthdays, weddings, anything fun, anything like if they're caregiving for someone, if they have a surgery, etc., all kinds of things. And then I put reminders into my calendar. And Sarah did something very similar, which you can see here, a clip of that, where you just put a reminder into your calendar, and then on that day or a few days before that event, you send an email to the student and say, hey, it's your birthday, or hey, I know that you have a wedding coming up, or I know that you're caregiving. I'm just checking in on you, to really increase that connection that in a face-to-face class you would have when you saw your students on a weekly basis. And in an online class, you don't always have that. And this just helps you keep up with making those connections. And then also Sarah, it has very flexible office hours in her courses. So she uses Calendly to allow her students to schedule 15-minute meetings with her in a very flexible format. So whenever she has an opening on her calendar, they can hop on there, make an appointment, and meet with her. And so it's not the traditional, I have a block of time on these particular days. It's really just you log on and you make an appointment when it's convenient for you. And we got really great feedback on these adjustments that we made in our classes. I mean, our students consistently told us communication is really where they feel the care of their faculty members. So we wanted to look at how can AI assist with this part of a course evaluation. And so Sarah's going to talk about that as well.
Okay, so I like to say that I'm a decently kind human being, but I also can be, frustrated at times, as I'm sure that we all can be. So in this particular example, I'm using Gemini, so a different platform every time. And it says, you are the professor for this course. You just received an email from a student, which I'm including at the end. Again, redacting all personal information. I want to respond empathetically. Keep it simple because you don't want to like wax poetic about what's going on. Keep it aligned to my classroom policies. So I've attached my syllabus there. And it gives me an output that I can start from. So I want to share any additional resources for this student as well, that our university provides. And again, look in the syllabus because we have all of those resources in the syllabus already. And then I included her initial email without those identifiers. It it is generating, and Gemini is a little bit slower of a generator than ChatGPT is, but it's analyzing what's happening here, and it says, "I'm so incredibly sorry to hear about your accident. Please know that your health and family are the absolute priority right now," which I agree with. We can work together on a plan for your coursework, so you can have some time to breathe and focus. I have the step-by-step guidelines. I have the university support in there. I have the phone numbers, the email supports, all of those things for that student. And in terms of coming up with that communication part, I think that that's really, really, really just been transformational. And this one was a legitimate thing. Like she had an accident, she was in the hospital for 2 weeks. But even for those ones where like, hey, I know that this was due 3 months ago, but I have 14 million assignments that I haven't turned in. What can I do? You'd still like, you don't know what's going on in the students' lives. You can still respond. Nell Nodding's Pedagogy of Care. You can still respond with empathy and still align with your policies. So hopefully that one was a little bit clearer than the magic bus.
All right, so our key insights across our findings were that everything sort of helped with this reduction of cognitive load. So, clarity helps to reduce cognitive load. The more detailed we are about expectations and steps that students need to take, the lower their cognitive load is. That warmth increases belonging. So, using welcoming language, having instructor presence really made a difference in how students felt about our courses and how much they felt a sense of connection to us as faculty. And then we also found that structure supports equity. So having things like consistent modules, consistent deadlines, and rubrics really helped all of our learners to succeed. And rubrics and creating rubrics for assignments is another place where AI can really help. To reduce cognitive load for faculty and to make a better structure and more clarity for students. So our design choices can actually help to operationalize these different insights that we found, and therefore help us to reduce barriers. And the truth is, most of our changes were not flashy. They were not major changes. They were really changes that focused on the clarity of the content of our courses and the way that we cared about our students and showed that care to our students.
Exactly. And so we began this work in this pre-AI saturation era, but now AI does shape course design choices and it does also raise equity questions. So who benefits from automation? Where does AI obscure human judgment? We need to use AI deliberately. And the question now isn't, should I use AI? It's how do we use it responsibly?
All right, so we also want to recognize that AI does sometimes risk equity. So there are bias that can be in our biases in the outputs that we get. So you have to review the output that you get for bias. You can't just take it for face value. So sometimes it actually reproduces biases that are in the literature or that are available online. Also, it can increase cognitive overload if we overuse it. So just like we were talking about earlier, it can actually make it more difficult than easier if we aren't using it correctly. And then it can reduce that human connection that we think is so essential for student success. So, if you are using it to write all your emails and you're not reviewing that to make sure that it is reflecting your voice or changing things to make sure that it's correct or that you agree with what it's saying, we all know when we get an AI generated email, right? And so our students can tell that as well. It's the same with feedback. If you use it to generate feedback for your students, you want to be sure that it still is in your voice and that you're not just copying and pasting, but that you are using it to help you find connections between things, and then that you're the one that is still putting that human touch on it. So efficiency without intention can actually undermine the equity that we're trying to create in our courses. And we really feel like the question isn't should we use AI because people are using it regardless, but it's how do we use it responsibly? And I think someone had asked, do you just are you transparent? Do you disclose with your students? And for me, the answer is yes. And I think for Sarah as well, just like we wanted to disclose it in this presentation. So if I use it for a rubric, I always cite ChatGPT if I've used it to create a rubric so my students know that. If I use it to, you know, change the tone of something, it depends on how much it changed the tone. I know that um, I sometimes I'll put a disclaimer in my emails, that I used AI to help me with generate ideas or with the tone of my email as well. So I do try to be very transparent about it because I think that ethically that is the right thing for us to do if we're using it as a tool to really think on how we present to others that we used AI.
And I know that this is not necessarily about course design, um, but a lot of us on here are professors. So I have used recently I submitted to the teaching professor and I did have a disclaimer in there about how I used AI to help me organize my actual publication. And so for not all academic journals will allow AI in any type of way, but some do. And yes, disclosure is key. So we're repeating ourselves now, but we really want to hone this in. Using AI is a tool, it's not a replacement. AI can help you identify hidden barriers in classes. It can generate accessible variations, which I have done, where if I've explained something and a student is not getting it, rather than being like, oh my God, the student is being so intentionally obtuse, I'll be like, I need three more ways to explain this. And I've even done stuff where like, this kid loves Pokemon Go. Can you explain how to teach concept of geography using Pokemon Go? And then I'm like, hey, AI, help me do this. Does this help you out? If you're ever struggling again, can you please take some ownership of your learning and do this yourself? And so I've done that for variations as well. And definitely with feedback, like I can give the rubric language, I can say what you did well, but if I want like especially for time crunches, if I want a really detailed piece of feedback to help students for something that they're going to be submitting at the end of the semester, I will definitely have my feedback plus like what ChatGPT said at the bottom as like an extra bonus, or Gemini or Claude. It cannot replace that human judgment, and it cannot replicate care. So we do have an activity, uh, and Naima was asking about the social justice syllabus design tool, and I'm going to put that link in the chat right now. I have a prompt right there as well. And I just want you to take a second, if you don't mind. We're going to do this. We only have a little bit of time left, so we're going to get as far as we can over the course of the next 5 minutes. What I would like for you to do is to download that social justice syllabus design tool, download one syllabus from a course you're teaching this semester, go to Claude, go to Gemini, go to Chat, whatever you use for your AI, and use this prompt. So you are a university professor teaching an online course, or you can change that if you don't teach an online course. I'm assuming that many of us do. You want to review your syllabus using the Social Justice Syllabus Design Tool, which you're going to attach. Generate a basic table that has each rubric row. In the second column, provide a basic analysis: meets, approaches, does not meet. Then, underneath, generate a list of the top 3 wins and the top 3 opportunities for improvement. In that list, provide explicit language recommendations for the opportunities. Use clear and concise language that is accessible for the professor. And I know that you can't copy and paste from a Zoom chat, but we also have it in the chat just in case you needed to go in that path. So we're going to give you a couple of minutes to work through that using the persona, the context, the task, the format, the exemplar, and the tone. And we would love it if you were willing to share anything that popped up as a win or an opportunity for you. So it is 10:38 my time and 12:38 Rachel's time. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then we'll see what we can get going. I guess most people have their screens off, so I don't know if people are actually doing this. I'm hoping for the best. And actually, I think I'm going to rush do it as well. I'm going to go to Gemini. Oh, you could copy and paste suggestions, or you could unmute and share them out, whatever works for you. Thank you so much, Chelsea. So she's got make growth mindset explicit in grading language. She's got what the current thing is and the opportunity to move forward, increasing the visibility of diverse voices and representation. It's stated, but the speakers and authors are not consistently foregrounded, so an opportunity there. And I got the same one on a previous one, Chelsea. So I added in my course content, if I was having them read something from Nell Noddings, I had a whole page like, this is who Nell Noddings is. Here's why this opinion professionally matters. This is who they are. You can do your own research, but this is where you're coming from. And then it also helped me make sure like I was thinking about representation for my students. Like our students are rural, so finding people that have experience in rural settings, or our students are also very, very, many of them are very Christian. So if there is like that as an identifier in some way, that's like a connection there for many of them. And all of you have your own unique context for your students, but you would do that around their students too. So thank you so much. TL says, can we feed all these documents plus our college's mission and vision into something like Play Lab and develop a chatbot that will do this to share with our faculty? TL, that sounds like an amazing presentation for the Peralta conference for next year. But yeah, I'd love to learn more about how that works. Okay. Thank you so much for humoring us with that. We only have a little bit more time left. So, oh, and thank
So I know
you,
people
Allie.
are
Yeah.
still sharing some things there. But we really wanted to look at like how AI could operate within the equity review framework rather than, we don't want it to replace the contextual instructor decision. So just like how you've posted what suggestions it had for you, there may be ways that you can implement some of that into your classes, but other things may not seem as good of a fit. And I mean, just like Sarah was talking about assessment earlier and feedback support, what I do is I put all my feedback that I've given to all the students in there, and then I ask it for themes, and then I post that for all the students to see, like what were themes that existed across the feedback that I gave. So there are a lot of different ways that you can use it.
That's on me. You're up again. I apologize.
So this was just an example of we put this into ChatGPT. We put our project in there and then ask it to do us a graphic. And this was what it came up with. Again, we just wanted to show this to say that it can give you some neat graphics. You have to check it. And then, you want to see like, is it emphasizing the same things that you want emphasized? Because you may have to tell it to add additional things. So just like putting in the human judgment is essential. So you have to tell it what you want to emphasize there.
And so there are some ethical guardrails that you're responsible for putting forward. I feel like we're beating a dead horse here, but operational steps require human review for AI generated rubrics and content. You can run bias checks. You can make document changes. And yes, efficiency is really great, but it is your professional responsibility to prioritize care over efficiency and to avoid over reliance on automation. The goal here, like AI is amazing, but our goal is not efficiency. The goal is equity.
And so just as you're doing this, think about like what are risks that you want to mitigate using AI? How can you use it responsibly? And then what changes can you make? So thinking about concrete actions to evolve your own pedagogy and improve engagement.
And so, yeah, this is an AI generated, or this is our first stock photo, not AI generated, it's a stock photo. But we have three closing points. One, equity requires intentional design and not accidental fixes. AI is a tool, not a solution, and it amplifies both good practices and existing harms. So be cognizant of that. And humanizing pedagogy must lead. You are prioritizing your presence in your classrooms, your belonging, and your transparency. If we don't lead with care, there's no way AI will either.
And so we had mentioned that we would give you the links. And so these QR codes will take you to the Digital Learning Equity Analysis Project materials and the Social Justice Syllabus Design Tool for you to use. And I know Sarah put the link in the chat earlier as well. And then if you have additional questions, you have our emails, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So I just shared the Every Learner Everywhere, and I'm also going to share this slide deck as a view option.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jumper and Dr. Straub. This was a very enlightening presentation, gave me a lot of new ideas. It looks like we're at 10:46, so yeah, folks can maybe, do you have a few minutes for questions in
We
case
do.
anyone has a burning question?
We do if there are any questions.
Okay, any questions out there or final comments? Okay, looks like no.
All
Thank you
good, all
though.
good.
A few comments on the chat. Thanking you.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, I love the applied activity. That was really helpful to plug in my syllabus. So thanks for that idea.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and we hope you found the session valuable, everybody. Thanks again for being here. Thanks to our wonderful presenters for sharing your time and expertise. And our next session will begin in 13 minutes. All right, take care, all.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.